welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I'm your host, Jessica. I am really excited to welcome back this author. We had her on last year about her book, Dreadful, which was anything but dreadful. It was wonderful. And I had the pleasure of working with her at the Gold Coast Book Fair about this up-and-coming book, or the new book, rather, I should say. So welcome back, Caitlin Rozakis, and please tell us a little bit about the Grimoire Grammar School Parent-Teacher Association.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I've been pitching this book as Big Little Lies Goes to Magic School. It's about a completely mundane mom whose kid is in kindergarten, gets bitten by a werewolf, and suddenly gets invited to go to this magic school that Vivian, the protagonist, never knew existed, to learn magic that Vivian didn't think was a thing. And now she finds herself on the PTA with a bunch of other parents who everyone else on the PTA are like wizards who can cast fireballs or people who can turn into seals. And she has no idea what she's doing. She's just a retired accountant.
Yeah, it was a really interesting idea. And as a parent, I really kind of felt for her, that she and her husband Daniel, they have their daughter Aria, and yeah, she's a werewolf. And, you really just took a situation which is magical and, sort of fun, a portal to a world where everybody is a different kind of monster in town, but brought the heart of two parents who are struggling to fit what they need for their daughter and their fulfill their daughter's needs, and their daughter herself who is struggling with this world and being something that she's not prepared to be because she's a kid. I loved it. It was really interesting. It was really funny. I loved, like, you had like a lot of group chats and stuff,
Yeah.
and I feel like every book that involves a PTA has to be somewhat catty, because that is one reason why I'm like, I do not want to be involved in a PTA. Tell me where to donate for the cupcakes and I'll do it. I'll buy t-shirts, but everything
Please don't
else,
make
no
me go
thank.
to this
Yeah,
meeting.
exactly. No, thank you. So, where did this whole idea come from for you?
Well, I mean, I grew up reading magic school books, like quite a lot of us. I mean, there's no way to avoid the elephant in the room that is Harry Potter. I hate that J.K. Rowling has gone on an anti-trans crusade, and I hate the hatred that she's spewing these days. But when I was a kid and the books were coming out, they were super important to me. And her Harry Potter is in a long tradition of magic school books. There's all kinds of books that deal with magical schools, and there are a lot of fun tropes. And it's always from the kid's perspective, and it's a really fun way to structure a book because you get to explore, like, learn about magic through the eyes of somebody who's learning about magic, who's being taught magic. And school content is very relatable. And feel like an awful lot of us geeky kids absolutely desperately wished that somebody would tap us on the shoulder and say, Psst, you are so special. You're going to be invited to come learn these magical things. And then I grew up, and I mean, I still love fantasy, but I had a kid of my own. And when you're a parent, you start going back and sort of reevaluating a lot of the things that you loved as a kid, often because you hope that your kid will love them too. And as a parent, I start thinking about this and I'm like, whoa, wait a second here. So you're telling me that this school has like a monster in the basement and kids died here a couple years ago, and you're going to go do a magical sport where people, they get all of their bones broken, and sure, there's a potion that will fix that, but they first got all of their bones broken. And I start comparing it against actual modern parenting, where it's like there is a permission slip for absolutely everything. And I'm thinking like, you're going to tell me there's a monster in the basement and there isn't a line of parents out the door of the principal saying, "What the heck?" So it really was coming from this experience of sort of slamming together the being a part of the PTA and dealing with all of the bizarreness that is modern parenting. And at the same time that I'm thinking about the stuff that I enjoy from my childhood, and I'm just like, there is no way that modern parents would ever let any of this stuff go down. And
For sure, absolutely, 100%. And I mean, in all honesty, you know, even discussing like Hogwarts in general before
mhm.
everything, and I 100% am there with you. It's very hard to divorce the doubling down and the tripling down from JKR and her. Just, I just,
Yeah, it's amazing that
it's a
it's that books
spiral.
that were so much about accepting who you are and accepting other people's differences
Yeah,
that she would then
I
turn into
know.
that. But I
But
don't want this podcast to
yeah,
be about her and
right,
her
of course. But
hatreds.
moving on from there, but
Yeah,
there is this thing that like I always kind of wondered, and I remember like my friends who, when we were 20 something and the books were still coming out, were wondering like, why would you put your kid in a place where every single year there's
something
something
horrifying happens.
horrifying that happens.
I
There's
mean,
giant snakes, and there's, I don't know, like a student gets killed, and everyone's just like, well, off you go, just go back. And I
I
really
mean, I
like,
guess there's this tradition in
yeah.
the British public school system, and where public means a very different thing than it does in
Public
the
is private and
US.
private is public in the British
Yeah.
schools. Yeah.
I mean, the British public school system, I don't know what it's like now, but clearly, in previous generations was super abusive. So I
Yeah.
guess I can kind of see how if you grew up with that in the background of knowing that, oh yeah, no, at least the upper class used to send their kids to these schools where they would totally be like starved and beaten
Yeah.
and have all kinds of nasty things happen to them and bullying and sexual abuse and stuff, that they would totally be chill
Yeah.
with,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
random kid gets eaten by monsters every once in a while. Uh, but at least modern American parents are not going to be okay with that, which I
No.
think is an improvement in general of society, that we are a lot less willing to condone child abuse in the name of education. So that's good. Uh, but but yeah, it's just it's it's also I mean, my kid is in Montessori because that was what was best for him. I was a public school kid. I had a great time. Uh, every kid is different. They need different things. And I there are wonderful things about both sides, and I do, and one of the reasons, like, I dedicated this book to teachers and administrators because they really are amazing, and I'm deeply grateful, and they've had a real rough decade for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
But the line that everyone has to walk, because like public school, like teachers and librarians are in a situation where they just cannot win right now, of no matter what they do, somebody's going to accuse them of being too hard, and someone's going to accuse them of being too soft. Someone's going to accuse them of being too permissive. Someone's going to accuse them of being too like authoritarian. It's really rough. Uh, but I also wanted to sort of celebrate the fact that it also is just there is inherent hilariousness involved in modern schooling, of everything from the way that we get like completely bonkers lists of supplies. I don't remember when I was a kid having like the school supply list being anywhere near as detailed and including anywhere near as many different, very specific things. When I was a kid, the fact that parents are so able to be in touch is both a good and a bad thing. Uh, the fact that we have the WhatsApp, like you would call it up, the chats, the WhatsApp chats culture is like that was not a thing that my parents had to deal with. And it's useful in that it is really nice to be able to easily talk to all the other parents. It's wonderful when we can have like, oh, it's a snow day, and somebody will put into the chat, hey, we're going to be at the park having a snowball fight in 20 minutes. Anybody want to come? Like that part's really cool. Uh, but it also can turn very quickly into hysteria and spiraling nonsense. Uh, I actually had kind of a delightful experience when writing this. My editor is in the UK. He's in London and he's a parent. And my copy editor is in Australia and he is also a parent. And we had just this wonderful conversation just in the comments off to the side of the manuscript, bonding over the trauma that is the parents' WhatsApp group because it doesn't apparently matter what continent you're on. WhatsApp groups for parents are uniquely terrible.
And when you're dealing with a world that you had no idea existed, and there's all of these sort of predetermined rules and things that you'd never consider, like, bringing chocolate and how that might affect certain
People who
species.
turn into dogs.
Yes, exactly. It's very it's relatable and also just sort of like fun to read. This was a really fun world, and as I mentioned earlier, it gets a little catty as one might think for poor Vivian,
Maybe just a little.
just a little bit. But there's also, you also just sort of bring a lot to the idea of just being new in town and also just like how difficult it is to co-parent with somebody. Because when you are a parent, you're bringing your experiences and what you want to keep and what you want to leave, and the other person is bringing theirs as well. And then you are parenting this whole new person. So, like, you have Vivian and Daniel who are thrown into, okay, we have this child with these needs. And supposedly being at this place will make it easier for her, but will it really? And then who takes the brunt of it on? And that is absolutely just so relatable.
Yeah, it was really important to me to portray a marriage in which neither party was wrong. Uh, I feel like a lot of books a lot of just our stories, uh, we love the big drama points of a relationship. We love the falling in love, and misunderstandings that turn into love and that kind of stuff. And we also love stories about relationships falling apart. So usually when you have a marriage centered in a book, uh, there's almost always infidelity or someone is abusive or something. It's always about the story is always about uh the relationship changing, either starting or ending in some way. Uh and the majority of us in long-term relationships are exactly that. They're long-term. And so one of the things that I really enjoyed exploring in this book was a good marriage that was facing a hard inflection point. Uh, and I think most people who have been in long-term relationships, like more than a couple of years, you there are some years that are really easy, but then there are always going to be points that are really hard. That your kid has problems, that you have financial problems, that you have problems with parents, with sickness, whatever. Like life is difficult. And I really wanted to explore how you could have two people who genuinely love each other and both want the same outcome, but have different ideas of what is the right thing to do to get to that outcome. And neither one is incorrect. So I spent a lot of time. This was a couple of rounds of revisions of balancing this so that both of them make mistakes both of them make mistakes for reasons that are very understandable. There's no ill intent, and both of them have some ideas of what to do to help their daughter, where they both want to help her, and but what they think will help her contradicts. And there's a lot of having to explore that and having to negotiate and people making mistakes and having to admit that they've made mistakes. And like, I mean, I guess minor spoilers of how do you reconcile those so that the marriage can continue. Uh, so like it was really important to me that both of the people in this marriage were very relatable and that neither of them was like the bad person who needed to be taught a lesson. I mean, they both have to learn lessons, but none of it is from malice. All of it is both of them are coming from a good place, and that they need to figure out how to balance those very different perspectives.
Definitely. And it worked really well. And one more thing I'll drop really quickly is that in these worlds and in these magic schools, there is always at least one prophecy.
Absolutely.
So, did you know like what you were going to do with that in the very beginning process of writing this book?
So I don't remember when exactly, like it wasn't in the very first core concept of the idea. Like the first core idea was just the basically the pitch of like kindergarten PTA, but all of this is with magic. Because the fun thing about adding magic is it just lets you take all of the stresses of real life and then ramp them up to 11. Everything that is funny about real life is funnier. Everything that is dangerous about real life is more dangerous. So that just lets you really pool everything to really highlight what's going on. With the prophecy, it came in fairly early, uh, as I was outlining of how that was going to play out. Uh, and I'm not going to go into too many details because I don't want to spoil what's going on with the prophecy. I did write a really terrible placeholder for the prophecy at the point where the prophecy is first given in full, because I was just like, okay, I have a vague idea of where this is going, so I just sort of like put in some sort of stuff, wrote all the way to the end, and then went back and made the prophecy fit what I needed it to do. Because I do outline heavily, but I also revise really heavily, and I know that at this point about my process. So it was like, okay, I'm not going to worry too much about making this thing perfect, not only in the phrasing, but even in what gets mentioned in the prophecy. I'm just going to throw some stuff in there. I'll figure out from a plot wise and from a character arc wise, what do I need to have happen? And then went back and laid all of the little clues. Uh, I do, I think I do about 50% of my foreshadowing on the first pass, and the other 50% of the foreshadowing gets done after I know exactly what's going to happen. And annoyingly, some of the foreshadowing I do in the first pass, I then have to take out because I changed my mind.
I really enjoyed this book. It's really just a nice comfort read and it's funny and I adored it. Would you ever return to this particular town in another book?
Uh, I don't know about the town, but I do have good news about the world in that we announced on Friday that the next book is going to be coming out next May, and it is in the same universe. And there are a couple minor characters who do crossover. It's called Startup Hell, and it is about a Manhattan startup tech employee who works for a very terrible small startup that is not going well. And one day she comes into her boss's office and he is face down on the desk, dead. And the demon he summoned is still trapped in the circle. So
What a
he's a
great
junior.
idea. I totally want to read that now.
Oh yeah,
I
he's a
want to read
junior
it now.
sales demon. She's a junior marketer. They team up. What could go wrong?
I love it. Thank you so much. Well, check out the Grimoire Grammar School Parent Teacher Association and Dreadful, and I can't wait for your next one. I really, really hope we're chatting about that again.
That would be delightful.
All right. This was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My guest was,
Caitlin Rozakis.
and we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.